Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Too British to Be Asian.
Sharon, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. So, just for everyone that maybe doesn't know you and sort of like starting to recognize who you are, like tell people about yourself.
Gosh, I'll give you the brief and short and potted history. Otherwise, we could be here all day. But people probably recognise me from a TV cooking show called Best Home Cook, which that aired in 2020. Right before the pandemic struck, and I think that was a point at which I decided food is my passion. I was working for AstraZeneca, funnily enough, at the time, and that's when I decided, okay, it's time for a career pivot. I'd like to follow my dreams. I'd like to do something that really fulfills me and that I'm passionate about. And it was slightly bad timing in the sense that we had the pandemic and lockdown and all the rest of it. So, and obviously we had various lockdowns lifted, and in between that strange period, I decided to upskill, and I put myself through a chef school in Ashburton in Devon. So I trained to be a chef, and then I wrote a book proposal, and that book proposal was snapped up by a publisher called Penguin Michael Joseph, and then I decided to write this book based on making Indian home food accessible to everybody. And, that's the premise of Desi Kitchen, but there's a bigger story to that. So I won't bombard you with that straight off the bat without any break for air. But
I love this book. I've got a copy. I'm going to put that up. I've got a copy as well.
Fabulous.
But I want to go back a little bit because you said to me earlier on that your grandparents came over here.
Yes.
And my platform is all about navigating between two cultures, which can be extremely problematic sometimes. Yes. So talk to me about like little Sarah, 8-year-old how she's changed from you here, author, chef, following your dreams. Like, talk to me some of the struggles that you had to overcome to get here.
Wow, little Sarah was probably quite precocious and a bit of a daddy's girl, actually. And I guess for me, my family were very westernized. I was brought up by my grandparents because, like a lot of us back then, grandparents looked after the kids, to allow mum and dad to work. So they had a huge influence over me. And I guess in terms of my dad, I was kind of the apple of his eye, though he loves both of his daughters. I'm one of 5 and I'm the younger daughter. I'm the younger daughter. So, he doted on me a little bit. And he always filled my head with a sense of, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be what you want to be. And I guess it's not until you're an adolescent that, it's a case of, hold on a minute. What do you mean you want to go out? So, from a food perspective, I learned to cook at the elbow of my mum, who is a fabulous cook. Our heritage from the Punjab in the north of India, and also my grandmother. And it was just hugely funny because they were so competitive at meal times. Who's got the roundest roti? Who makes the best chapati? Who makes the best sabji? And actually, they both made an amazing saag, sarson ka saag, because the investment in time in that, particularly back then, when you didn't have the stick blenders and you were banging it with a cork, they grew their own vegetables. You wear Punjabi, so there's 3 topics of conversation in a Punjabi household: food, drink, and food and drink, and that's all we ever talked about. So it was very, the house was always full of visitors. It was very social. It was very community focused. And because my mum and my grandma were such good cooks, we couldn't get rid of the visitors that used to come, because I know they're going to get something good to eat. And my grandma used to love getting people round to catch up on the latest gossip as well. So, that was one of the reasons why the house. Yeah, that's the reason why.
You kind of stuck to your own area, you stuck to your own people, and that was kind of their entertainment television, would you say?
Yeah, it was. Although she was partial to some. We used to rent videos back then. It was the old VHSs from the local sari shop. Yeah. So every Friday, because Granddad was massively into Bollywood, So every Friday we'd watch these, VHS videos from the,
the
Bollywood. Yeah, I had a crush on Amitabh Bachchan. I mean, who didn't?
Yeah,
he was a god back then, wasn't he? He still is.
Yeah.
But not my brothers and sisters weren't really that into it, but I was always there thinking, I'd like to watch this. And Naseeb was one of my favorite films. I was always singing along to that. And it was funny because, you talk about the conflict of different cultures. And even though we did used to watch these Bollywood movies, my gran would love the Carry On movies. She had a filthy sense of humor. So she used to love Carry On. We lived like...
I'm just trying to envisage your grandmother sitting there watching.
Yeah. Oh, she loved it. She used to howl with laughter at that. She absolutely loved it. The other thing we used to watch is my grandparents lived on their bedroom was on the ground floor. So, we'd pile into their room, us kids a lot of the time, and we'd watch things like Dynasty and the Colbys and Dallas because my grandma loved Alexis. So, it was weird, this balancing of these very different cultures and the juxtaposition of very different TV, even because we didn't have ZTV in the satellite channels then.
No.
So it was whatever they put on Channel 4 very late at night.
The 4 channels, wasn't there? There was 4 channels. Yeah, definitely. And I want to know, like you said, you were one of 5.
Yes.
So how do you all differ, the 5 of you?
Hugely. I'm hugely different to all of my brothers and sisters.
What's
really.
the age gap?
The age gap is quite tight. Now I've got to remember all of their ages, so that's going to be a bit of a struggle. But my sister's the oldest, and she's about 5 or 6 years older than me. And then I have a brother who was born the year after her, and then another brother that was born the year after him, and then there was a 2-year gap for me. And then a 2-year gap for my brother, my little brother.
So with your eldest, I'm always intrigued by this because my mum's one of 7, wow. and that was part of the culture to have a lot of children.
Yes,
part of it. And as you say, the grandparents would help out and things like that.
Absolutely.
And I'm always intrigued because I look at my mum's one of 7, and I look at the eldest and I look at the youngest. Yeah. They're so different. I mean,
definitely
polar opposites.
There's
male and female. I mean, not even that, but just mindset, just how they think, just how again the cultures. Like my oldest aunt, she's very much she's not as Western as I would say. I think she was about 18 when my youngest uncle was born. So I mean, she was an adult. So I'm always intrigued to find out more when my guests come on, like how you differ being the youngest to your oldest.
Well, you see, I had, because my dad's one of 6 and he's the oldest. So my aunts and uncles were quite young and almost like older brothers and sisters, themselves. But my sister, because I was the younger one, she was always really cool when we were growing up. And I was like the daggy, nerdy younger sister. And I think that's something that anybody that's got an older sister can relate to, because, older siblings don't like their style to be cramped. But we're all very different. I mean, when I think about even our music tastes, my music tastes are so eclectic because I grew up in the Midlands. So, and there's a big Afro-Caribbean community there. So, I love my reggae, I love R&B, I love hip hop. But I also love like British indie and, I'm a 90s kid. So I'm down with that scene with Oasis and Blur.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, it's huge. The only thing that I wasn't so keen on was my cha-cha was into Neil Diamond, and I'm not having that. That's the only thing that I'm not having.
Too old.
Yeah. But it was all the 80s music as well. The New Romantic, Spandau Ballet. My uncles used to love that. Gosh, what else was there? Duran Duran. It was Motown. One of my aunts used to love Motown, so I grew up listening to that. So music was a big thing, and it's so that in itself is reflects you know, my personality, and just has a huge amount of influence and a huge amount of cultures
100%.
crossing the globe.
100%, because also, you know, when, you know, as you say, you're 90s, I'm an 80s, 90s child as well. So growing up, sometimes that's all we had, just putting on music, because you know, it was a different world out there, you know.
True.
We didn't have social media, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have platforms where we could, you know, find our tribe. So I think sometimes it can be quite lonely, you know, being brought up in an area, whatever area it was. And that's why I talk about navigating between two cultures, because in some respects we had to not particularly have a persona, but you know, we had to try and fit in somehow, didn't we?
And I guess particularly with you know, being messy, there's code switching is, you know, a huge thing, because you are different things depending on your audience. So then you learn to have lots of different faces, you know, for want of a better phrase, depending on who you're speaking to. And I think to a degree that's something that everybody has to navigate. But when you are straddling different cultures that are, you know, culturally at one end, you know, and the others at another extreme, it's even more difficult. And identity and belonging was a huge theme when I spoke to a lot of the contributors in the book. And it's something that people grapple with, and you know, I guess only as another
grapple with.
Because only as another Desi do you understand, you know, because you know, ultimately it's about acceptance, isn't it? But then acceptance in which tribe, in which crowd, in which audience, in which context. So we have a very much a hyphenated identity.
And I definitely think the word, and I say acceptance quite a lot, because it's not even just navigating through what group, it's also accepting yourself, like am I, you know, and I found that particularly hard, sort of trying to navigate, as you can hear from my accent, you know. So I wasn't, you know, didn't have this twang on me. So, but when I sort of went to college and suddenly I was just surrounded by so many South Asians, you know, they would say to me, you know, like, you're really British. I was like, because for the first sort of like 16 years of my life, I've been in a sort of like an area which there wasn't a lot of people of colour.
Right.
That was really difficult. And I sort of kind of want to sort of revert back to you on that. So like navigating through that, and those isolating moments, how did you deal with those isolating moments that you had?
That's a searching question. I guess you'd have to think about specific examples, which I'm struggling to think of you know on the spot. But you know, I guess you know from a casual perspective, I remember growing up, and you know, certain people would get accused, oh, you're such a coconut, you're this, that, and the other. And I don't think there's any need to throw any shade on people like that, because ultimately we're all trying to discover who we are. And I guess, you know, for our parents' generation, they clung to their Indianness, for want of a better phrase, because that was their anchor to home. And you know, for people of my grandparents' generation, you know, when they first came here, it was about survival. You know, and ultimately, I think we take different risks. And you know, just to go back to that, you know, as a child, you don't really appreciate, you know, the trials and tribulations that your parents and your grandparents have to go through. And I have so much respect for what they did to give us a better life. You know, I mean, take my mom, you know, it was arranged marriages were obviously prominent back then. She married a man she hadn't met before. She moved to a country, you know, when she was 20 years old. She was so young. And you know, she moves to a country that she knows very little about, doesn't even speak the language completely fluently. And just the bravery of that step, of moving yourself out of your family environment to an environment that is so alien just the bravery involved in that. And if I look at some of the other communities that I've explored in the book, you know, some communities like, you know, Sri Lankans that is, that escaped civil war and violence, and, you know, these horrible things that were happening in their home countries, the bravery in, you know, uprooting your family and moving and settling somewhere else. So, you know, the challenges they had were about survival, you know, because they couldn't afford to fail. Now, I think for us, the challenges that we face and the risks that we take are being ourselves, because, you know, we have a lot of pressure to be doctors, lawyers, you know, engineers, you know, they're the acceptable kind of occupations, aren't they? And my dad wanted me to be a lawyer, and I was just like, no, that does not appeal to me whatsoever, and I'm not doing it. But you know, I appreciate not everybody's, you know, has the same luxury to be able to say no to their parents, you know, depending on everybody's own individual circumstance. But the risks that we take now, and that's why I wanted to change my career. And I've spoken to some lovely people in the book that have taken similar risks. Is to follow our dreams, actually discover who we are, connect with what we want, connect with our inner selves. And, you know, in the book, I aim to, you know, I want it to be something that feeds your mind, body, and soul. Yes, you've got these delicious recipes that will nourish you, but then I also want people to explore the stories and the experiences, the lived experience and the authentic voices of each of the communities that I've represented, and there are 11 in all. Look at the trials and tribulations they've overcome, so you've got something to connect with, you've got something you can relate to, and, you know, understand that no, you're not on your own. These are shared experiences, we all go through them, and actually this is how other people have coped. And, you know, it feeds your soul in the sense that, you know, I talk about spirituality and the religions of some of these other communities, because it was a learning curve for me. I mean, there's a Parsi community that I've explored that are based in London. I knew nothing about, you know, the Zoroastrian faith. And what I have learned about,
I didn't know that until I read. I didn't know that either, and I was like, what is? I thought something like, you know, something I'd know, like, made up, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't have a clue on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, let me share a little bit of context.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd love.
So Parsis are a community. They're synonymous with Bombay cafe culture in many ways. So that's why that's ended up being like the breakfast chapter, because it's got your masala baked beans, your bhaji, your curry. Although we call it bhaji in Punjabi, but it's a curry.
I love that. I love that you put, like, we talk about cultures, but sort of like the Desi and the British coming together. That I really do that.
Yeah, and there's a story in that book. So the Parsis were of Persian origin, and they escaped to you know, evade the persecution of their Zoroastrian faith, and they came to Gujarat initially, and to seek asylum. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about the sugar in the milk, because I think this epitomizes what Desis contribute, really. So the Zoroastrian priests came to the court of King Rana, Jadav Rana, and, you know, they were seeking asylum, and there was a language barrier. So the councillors advising King Rana sent the priests a glass of milk brimming to the top, to convey that our land is full, we don't have room to accommodate you, so, you know, we can't accept you. So what the priests did was they added sugar to sweeten the milk, and then they sent that back to send the message that we will work hard with our good thoughts, our good work, our good deeds, and enrich your land and bring much goodness to it. So impressed, King Rana granted them asylum, and then they thrived. And I guess this is what Desi Kitchen is about. It's about, well, how are we Desi communities adding sugar to the milk in the UK?
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. I really do. So tell me, was that your favorite part of writing the book? What was your favorite part when putting
my favorite part, God, it was a real privilege to speak to some of these people, because as a Punjabi, I feel completely comfortable in talking and writing about Punjabi recipes, because that's my heritage. What I wanted to do was to give these other communities a voice that represented them in an authentic way. So I could really, get under the skin of that culture and that community, because, Indian food, and there is no such thing as Indian food, the regions, the diversity, the hyper seasonality, it's massive. The difference between North Indian food to South Indian food is like the difference between night and day, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I wanted to give a platform to really celebrate, these, that diversity and the regionality of it. And I guess it's two regions you're looking at then, really, isn't it? Because not only is it the region of your heritage, but then it's the region in the UK where that settles. So what the book explores are the traditional recipes that they brought with them that represent that specific community, but then also that Desi freestyle remix when you're adding in those British elements, and then it's becoming something that's Desi.
And what did your family think about the book? What was their reaction to it?
My family are so proud, and it's so lovely to have that feeling, and particularly, for my mom, because she taught me how to cook, so she's particularly proud. And I guess they probably weren't so sure about, what do you mean you're leaving your secure corporate job to do what? Why are you doing this? You're fine as you are. You're happy as you are. Don't take that risk. And I suppose there's a degree of validation, really, because I took that risk, mum and dad. I backed myself, and actually this is what I've done, and it's so great to share in that success with them.
And also that courage as well, because as we talked a very little bit about acceptance as well, because a lot of people, my children will not be brought up the way I did. They won't have an issue with identity or anything like that. And I kind of feel like when I talk to people my age group, and even like just the other day, there is I just don't know what I want to do. I don't know what my passions are. I don't actually know, where I fit in. So, and I just feel like, especially with your story, and like just, bring that sort of energy into the word dreams, how would you explain to someone if they wanted to follow a similar career path to you? What would you advise them?
I think, as you say, it's deciding on what your dream is, what your passion is. And I think that's half the battle. And some people are very lucky in the sense that they know from a young age, this is what I really want to go for. This is what really, sets my heart alight. This is my deepest desire to do this. For me, it came later. It came, once, I'm in my 40s, so it came when I'd, had my boy. I'm married, and there was just something that wasn't quite, completing me almost. So there's no advice I can give per se, because it's such a personal journey. And I think in order to understand, okay, well, what is my kismet? What is my, what does fate have in store for me? I think you've got to connect with yourself.
Yeah.
And
I think as well, like maybe try everything. Just try everything, try being that chef, try opening a restaurant, try opening a pop-up, and just because there is some passion, but there's also that hard work that goes into it. I mean, this is a huge book. This wasn't this was not overnight. And you know what really sort of struck me with this is the amount of love that was in this. Well, you can tell that you have put everything into.
Thank you.
And when you just hear your, like, I want everyone to buy this. It's something seriously, and it's something I've read. I've interviewed chefs before, and this is on par. It's a brilliant book, and it's so well thought out as well. I definitely think this is a really proud moment. Definitely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I guess it's written in the sense that coming from a place where food is our love language. Food, there's different communities that are explored, but what unites us is the love of food.
Yeah.
And that's you know, that's how in our family and in many Desi cultures, that's how we express our love, is through food and feeding.
And 100%, because I actually I didn't know how to make Indian food at all. So I've had to, so it's only until I've had my girls that I've actually learned. And because I think it's really important, because as you say, it's a huge part of our heritage.
Yes.
Food.
Yeah.
It's the spices, it's the smells, it's the equipment that we use, you know, the wooden spoons. And also it's something that you can do together as a family. I truly believe that.
Definitely. And I think what I would say is, you know, if you don't, even if you are a cook that's never cooked Indian food before, don't be scared, because the book is written from the angle where, you know, if you've never even been in a kitchen before, this is completely accessible, because I wanted to make authentic food, authentic Desi cooking accessible to everybody without dumbing it down.
Yeah.
So there are some really quick and easy recipes that you just chuck, you know, in a pot, and hey presto, it's ready. But then there are other recipes that are nuanced, because they are reflective of a culture, and our food is an expression of our identity. And I think it's really important to pay that due respect.
100%. And also, like, what I want my children to do is be doing it itself, like keep it going as well. Because what we don't want is that be taken away from you as either, and as a family. So I definitely want that to carry on as well. And I really wish the best for this. I really love it. And I think that we just need more people like you, Sarah, sort of normalizing, because that was a real stigma for me, not knowing how to cook. I mean, I don't know my mother tongue either. So the next question was, can you speak Punjabi?
Wow. Badly. And I can just about understand Hindi.
Oh no, I'm terrible.
Oh, that's a hard one.
And also, can you cook? So when you say no to both of them, it's like people, you know, you see their faces go, but then what's the point? Like, but definitely, I haven't tried a recipe yet, but I'm definitely going to. And I wish you the best. What's in store for you next?
Well, you know, I kind of, you know, I do believe in fate and kismet, definitely. And I don't believe in luck either, because, you know, you said, well, you know, what advice would you give to people? And it's work hard, and work hard and work on yourself to understand what it is that you want and what you want to go after. And, you know, I don't know what the future holds, but you know, I don't think such a thing as luck exists. Luck is nothing more than readiness meets opportunity. And all I can tell you is that I'm ready.
Oh my God. Well, we're ready as well. Sarah, thank you so much.
Amazing.
I really appreciate you coming on, and I'd love you to come back on the show as well.
I'd love that. Thank you so much for your time, Sharon. It's been really lovely to chat.
Thank you, Sarah. Take care.
Thank you.